Picture this. Think about the last time you were standing in a massive concrete sports bowl. The roar of the crowd, the bright lights, the sheer unbelievable scale of the structure all around you. It's so easy to take these monumental arenas for granted, isn't it? We just walk in and find our seats. But what if I told you that these venues are far, far more than just places to watch a game? In this explainer, we're going to look at the very foundation of sports architecture. We're going to reveal how these structures, right from their earliest days, actually acted as historical mirrors, reflecting deep class struggles, massive technological leaps, and honestly, the undeniable human need for connection.
Okay, let's dive into this and lay out our roadmap. First, we'll cover the rise of stadiums. Then look at how the shapes of the game dictated design. After that, we'll examine the stadium class divide, track the materials that changed everything, and finally, explore how these places became anchors of community identity. So let's start with a really foundational question. Why do we even build massive stadiums in the first place? I mean, for a very long time, athletic pursuits were completely informal. People just, kicked a ball in a park or ran around in an open field. So what exactly caused that shift from casual ad hoc play to the construction of permanent, monumental arenas? To understand that, we actually have to look back at a time of massive societal upheaval.
Section 1. The rise of stadiums. From informal fields to purpose-built venues.
All right, so during the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, society fundamentally changed. We moved away from the old state-sponsored spectacles, like the ancient Roman Colosseum, and modern sports really began to be driven by athletic clubs. Now, an athletic club is essentially a modern, membership-based organization. Whether they were gentlemen preserving aristocratic traditions or workers just seeking some community, these groups grew incredibly fast. And that growth sparked an urgent, absolute need for permanent, dedicated environments to host, organize sports, and build social cohesion.
There were a few primary drivers that really pushed this evolution forward. Over in the UK, educational reform started integrating sports like rugby and cricket into school curriculums to foster teamwork and discipline. And guess what? The alumni wanted to keep playing after they graduated. Meanwhile, industrialization was cramming people into dense cities, creating this desperate need for working-class recreation just to escape the sheer monotony of factory life. Throwing a ball around in an informal public park just couldn't cut it anymore. Building an actual stadium signified a club's permanence, its influence, and its absolute commitment to the community.
Section 2. Shapes of the game. How rules dictated architecture.
Let's move to the physical design and see how this builds, literally. This architectural evolution generally followed 3 distinct steps. Step 1. Simply enclose the field. This was all about containment, literally just putting up a fence to separate the players from the spectators who were standing on grass banks. Step 2. Build a pavilion. As these clubs gained some financial footing, they added offices, changing rooms, and social spaces. And finally, Step 3. Add dedicated stands. We're talking robust, brick constructions with covered seating to actually protect paying fans from the rain.
But here's where it gets interesting. The shape of those enclosures varied wildly depending on the sport itself. Football and rugby required rectangular or oval pitches, right? And that pushed fans right up against the boundaries to foster this intense, intimate support. Conversely, athletics or horse racing demanded massive, curvy linear or circular tracks. Those were designed not for intimacy but for sweeping mass spectacle. And then you had specialized sports that demanded complex engineering, like indoor arenas or velodromes, just to specifically control the environment. So the sport itself was essentially the architect.
Section 3. The stadium class divide. Architecture as a social mirror. And this brilliantly illustrates our next major point. These buildings were absolutely not just neutral containers. They were active tools for social stratification. On one side, you had the elite clubs. These were built by wealthy individuals in affluent suburbs, intentionally distanced from working-class districts. They featured neoclassical styles, premium seating, and a highly curated, refined experience. Contrast that with working-class clubs. These were situated right in the urban centers they served, built of modest timber and iron with open, standing terraces. And fascinatingly, building these modest grounds through voluntary labor was a massive act of communal empowerment for those workers.
But this class divide didn't just exist between different clubs across town. It was literally built right into the architecture of single venues. Think about the difference today between buying a ticket for a VIP box versus standing in the bleachers. Historically, this physical segregation was stark. You had the covered, comfortable grandstands for the wealthy paying patrons, physically elevated and separated from the open, exposed standing room terraces where the working class gathered. The architecture was basically constantly reminding everyone of their exact place in the broader societal hierarchy.
Section 4.
materials that changed everything, enabling architectural ambition.
Now, as the Industrial Revolution kicked into high gear, the sheer desire to host bigger and bigger crowds supercharged architectural ambition. Early on in the pre-industrial era, venues relied on cheap, functional timber and earthworks. Then the Victorian era brought in brick and stone masonry for better durability and detail. But then came the true game changer: structural iron and steel. By overcoming the limits of traditional masonry, steel allowed for these massive cantilevered roofs. Suddenly, you didn't need thick columns blocking the fans' views. You could shelter thousands of people all at once.
But it's really the late 19th century that stands as the definitive turning point in all of this. Why? Well, reinforced concrete. It was affordable, incredibly strong, and you could mold it into highly complex shapes. It literally revolutionized stadium design. It's what allowed clubs to pour the massive, monolithic, tiered seating bowls that we still recognize in stadiums today.
Section 5. Anchors of community identity. Forging collective memory.
So the crucial point is this: if we look beyond the steel and the concrete, we have to recognize the deep emotional resonance of these structures. They really transcended their materials to become living, breathing focal points for mutual support. They were vital centers of social life where people could finally escape the daily grind of their labor. They stood as towering symbols of local civic pride, arenas of aspiration where local heroes could rise up, and, as we talked about, actual sites of voluntary collective construction built by the very hands of the fans themselves.
Inside these walls, a profound collective ritual took place. Think about the pre-match anticipation, the synchronized roar of the crowd, the shared agony of defeat, the total ecstasy of victory. This rhythm bound individuals together, completely overriding differences in their outside occupations or backgrounds. The stadium became what historians like to call a repository of memory. Generations of fans from the exact same families would pass through the exact same turnstiles, linking their own personal, family stories directly to the heritage of the club. It's pretty powerful stuff.
I want to read a quote directly from our source material here, because it just perfectly captures the emotional weight of what we're talking about today. The stories embedded within these structures are not merely tales of bricks and mortar, but narratives of human aspiration, community building, and the indelible link between physical activity and social identity. Absolutely hits the nail on the head.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. The next time you walk into a towering, modern sports arena in your city, try to look past the giant screens and the luxury suites. Remember the historical forces that actually shaped those enclosures, and ask yourself, centuries from now, what will our modern stadiums tell future historians about our society today? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope it changes the way you view the architecture of sport forever.